Okay, look, I know I'm a month late, but I finally watched Squid Game on Netflix, and I know it had a lot of hype around it, and personally, I believe it lived up to that hype. However, if I'm being completely honest, the biggest reason why I watched it in the first place was because of this hype. It's like everywhere I looked, it's all anyone was talking about. My entire social media feed was fan theories, and my YouTube homepage was all reviews and critiques, and even the small work conversations I was hearing before meetings were all about whether or not we had seen the acclaimed series.
And after 4 weeks of this, I just couldn't take it anymore. I finally caved, and the fear of missing out won yet again. FOMO is an acronym for the fear of missing out, and yeah, it's a very real thing. In fact, this phenomenon is actually becoming more common the more we start to embrace social media within our society. Now, the name is pretty self-explanatory, but I think for the sake of the video, I want to break it down just a bit more so we really understand what we're talking about here. The fear of missing out is the feeling or the perception that the people around us are having more fun, or they just have better lives altogether. I think from my experience, I finally came up with the perfect way to explain it, but to me, the fear of missing out is the long-lost child of regret and envy. Now, it is super easy to confuse all this stuff because there's so much overlap, so I do want to clarify that it's not just like the grass is greener type of deal, and while that is an issue in itself, FOMO isn't necessarily the idea that you could be doing something better. To me, FOMO is more like the feeling you get because somebody else is doing something that you've convinced yourself is better, and now you feel the need to be a part of it only because you already aren't. I hope this makes sense because in my head it sounds so good, but I won't know until I edit this video. Whatever, either way, it's a really huge issue and it only seems to be getting worse.
The idea that you may be missing out on something fundamentally important isn't necessarily new, but the study of the topic and even the phrase itself have only been around since the mid-90s when marketing strategist Dr. Dan Herman first identified this occurrence. Then, in 2004, the term FOMO was later popularized by author Patrick J. McGinnis, who also coined a similar term called the fear of a better option.
Or FOBO, which didn't stick as well as FOMO, but I personally think it rolls right off the tongue. Since the creation of social media, the fear of missing out is more prevalent because we now have access to the best parts of everybody's lives. And I think the key part here is you have to understand that it's the best part of their lives. We really only see the highlights of everybody else's lives on social media, so what we start to do is we start to compare our worst days and even our average days to everybody else's best days. I mean, come on, really, how often do you see somebody posting about the worst parts of their life? That's not how you build the brand, that's not what gets you likes. How about this? How about instead, we make it look like we're having more fun than everybody else. We make it look like we're living your dream life. And the worst part about all of this is that the social media companies know exactly what they're doing. I mean, they thrive off of this fear of missing out. That's exactly why they start to pump out more features like stories and location check-ins, just to give us more ammunition to try to show off how cool our lives really are. And when we start to see all these false perceptions of real life in different forms of media, it's no wonder we start this upward comparison. I mean, honestly, how am I supposed to watch my boy fly to a music festival on a private jet and not feel like my night in filming a video that's gonna get less than 100 views doesn't measure up? I am literally getting FOMO just by creating these made up situations for this video. But this is how it happens. This is exactly how the cycle of FOMO begins.
Okay, so here's what the never-ending FOMO cycle looks like. You see somebody post a cool picture of them at a party with a caption like, "Last night was a movie," and now you have FOMO, and you need to fill this empty feeling inside by posting your own picture that highlights just how cool your life is online. But now you need to post something super witty, and be sure to tag the location, which just so happens to be the coolest restaurant in town. And now all of your followers are going to see this and repeat the same steps of the cycle, and it's going to go on and on and on.
Now there's good news and there's bad news. Well, actually I guess the news is the exact same, but it depends on how you interpret it. But every single person of every age at some point in their life is going to feel this fear of missing out. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, it just means you're human.
But the downside to being human is that we can experience negative effects on our mental health from FOMO, and unfortunately it goes even deeper than just this fear of missing out. In a report titled #The Struggle is Real, researchers Sally Meng and Kelly Arbo connect the dots between human psychology and our dependence on our phones. In science terms, they call this nomophobia, which basically just means the fear of not having your phone. After conducting surveys with undergrad students, they found that both FOMO and nomophobia are linked with addictive behaviors, and even excessive use of our phones are connected to lower self-esteem and emotional instability. In separate studies, researchers have also seen similar results with high school students who feel a constant pressure to be available to combat this fear of missing out. And to no surprise, this also leads to other issues like trouble with sleep, anxiety, depression, and so much more.
Now, this may not be the case for everybody, or maybe it is and you just haven't realized it yet, but at least in my experience, 9 times out of 10, my FOMO is wrong. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen an invitation for the party of the year and then typed up on Snapchat. I see everybody having fun on Instagram, and then I show up and it's 5 dudes splitting a bottle of New Am. There's even one time where I went to Vegas with my boys and I lost like $500, and the entire time I just sat there thinking, man, I'd rather be at home right now. Now, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I can't tell you how many times I've convinced myself that if I miss this one night or this one event or this one party, that this is the one time that $1 million falls from the sky and I'd have the best night ever. But honestly, half the time my experience is just kind of whatever. And I'm starting to get a feeling that the FOMO portion of my brain shares a room with my anxiety because it's very similar to my fear of a catastrophic event happening. It's like I know I've survived a million car rides before, but what if this is the one time that I pass out at the wheel from hyperventilating from a panic attack and I just blow up? But guess what? That's literally never happened, and it probably won't ever happen. The truth is, this constant belief that the next place or person or event is going to be the perfect thing for you is more you basing your decisions off of an imaginary life rather than reality itself. And if you keep this up for too long, you're going to find yourself in the same position I was in, where you no longer feel present or appreciative of the stuff that's going on in your life. I guess what I'm getting at is that too many of us let compulsion get in the way of genuine enjoyment. The harsh reality of life, and one of the hardest pills for me to swallow, was that every experience is going to come with a cost. And it may not be monetary, it may not be actual money itself, but it will cost you something. And this doesn't necessarily mean you're missing something. I mean, if you want to get technical with it, no matter what choice you make in life, you will always be missing out on something else. But the thing is, sometimes it's actually better to be missing those things. I gave up on so many friendships and meaningful experiences because I was too busy chasing this imaginary dream life in my head. And when the dust finally settled, I realized that in my chase to make my life look better than everybody else's, I missed out on some not so talked about but great experiences. Things like being alone or having good relationships or even learning something from a YouTube video like this, just having the time to teach myself stuff. These are all things you don't see people posting about online, but they're still great experiences. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Mom, you were right. If all of my friends were jumping off a bridge, I wouldn't do it too.